Okay, welcome. I'd like to open up the City Council closed session for March 7th, 2023. Call to order. Roll call, please.
Councilmember White,
Here.
Councilmember Voigt,
Here.
Councilmember Lara,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Fenn,
Here.
Mayor Martinez.
Here, and we call to order at 5 p.m. We open with public comments. This meeting will be open to the public and conducted in a virtual format to be inclusive of all participation preferences. Public comment participation is encouraged by emailing any comment to the city clerk's office or by calling in using the phone number provided on the front of the agenda. Do we have public comment?
Yes, sir.
All right, we'll open up public comment at 5:01 p.m.
Nika Ilapotofe. Come on up. You can come to the mic right here. Go right ahead.
Okay. Good evening, council members, the mayor, and everyone here. Good evening. I will read off, so it's so much in my mind, but I will read off the little notes that I made. My name is Neka Iloputaife. I'm the owner of 1421 Faircliff Street, Beaumont, California. I have come today to state that I will be taking the responsibility of completing the house and bringing it up to the city code. The property physically and legally belongs to me. Before now, I have already had a contractor come out to my property and make an analysis on how to bring it up to the city code. The name of the contractor is David Lopez, and he sent two men to come here to talk to the city council, and he provided me with his license number. I wanted to keep, the original plan, the original approved plan of the house. I want to complete the project in a timely manner. My contractor will work with the city. In addition, all the fines accumulated are also in my name. This especially has taken a toll on my well-being all these years. I have now come to plead with the city to reconsider. To reconsider the fine of $103,865 that has been accumulated by my husband through citation. As of recent, he is no longer allowed at the residence. I have pleaded with him to work with the city for so long, but he had refused. I have now legally taken control of the property so that I could complete the project. The problem now is paying the fine as well as completing the project create overwhelming amount of hardship to me. I am doing this by myself. Me and my children are suffering from cold weather due to uncompleted house. I am the only one that has been working to keep the roof over my head. I have come today to the city council to reconsider for a reconsideration and a way forward to complete my house.
We'll be discussing this item in closed session this evening. If you have any questions, you can ask.
Okay, ma'am, have you
You as
concluded your
counsel.
comments?
You
Your
said,
prepared statements, have you concluded your prepared speech?
Yes.
Statement? All right, thank you. So I don't have any comments at this time. Does any council member have any comment at this time? Mr. Wall, Councilmember White?
It is okay to ask questions then? Okay, and I can ask her a question? Can you tell me, when you say that you're doing this on your own and that you've recently taken control of the property, is your husband still in control, involved?
no.
Okay, and we have, as you know, tell me if I'm stepping over the line, John, but we have, currently, we're going to be discussing the lawsuit or the legal that we have
Yeah.
going on right now. Has there been any change in that status?
for me, I told him to remove my name. If he's not going to, he did, I don't know if he removed my name or not. I said, remove my name, whatever, because I called the lawyer. He said, if I prepare a document to withdraw the case, will you sign? I said, yes, I will sign it.
Will your husband sign it?
I don't know about what he
Okay.
wants to sign because at this point, I'm thinking about myself and my children. We're the ones suffering. So he's no longer in the house. So it's me and my children in the house.
Okay, I understand. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, Councilmember Lara?
Yes, ma'am. I understand you hired a contractor. Have you hired a licensed structural engineer to go through the home?
I couldn't find one. The contractor that I found said, go ahead, talk with the city first before we step in. And he gonna get me structural engineer, which I was reading from the last comment that the structural engineer needs to come in and see the state of how the building is, how far it is, and what has been done, which I don't have knowledge about that. So the contractor that I talked to said he will find somebody that will do that. The structural engineer that will come and
Is
check
it possible to
the house.
is it okay to ask the contractor a question?
Yes.
Hi, have you done any restoration work such as this or what I would call
Yes,
construction,
yes,
restoring
yes,
construction
yes.
without permit?
I'm here on behalf of Nikita. I know her. She go to Sunrise Church. She came to my home. My sons are friends with her kids, and she brought this to my attention. And so I spoke with David, he has the Lopez Excel Building and Restoration Comp. He told me that he can get a structural engineer for that. But on behalf of that, we're ready to tackle this project on, and whatever codes we need to adjust, tear down, lift up. We want to help this woman.
Okay.
So if you guys can find it in your hearts, to come in agreement to help out, hey man, bless your hearts for that.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, ma'am.
Okay,
Just one quick question. Do we have a license number for the contractor?
Yes.
And what is that?
CSLB number 772485.
Thank you.
And I think their company name is Building and Restoration Corporation.
Do you know the classification on that license?
It's called the Excel Building Restoration. License number is CSLB. The number is 772485.
Okay.
Is that a
Is that
B
a
license?
general or a B?
Yeah, that's
It's a B?
Yeah, CSLB as a boy, yeah.
We'll look it up.
okay, well, we thank you for that
You guys want a
comment.
copy of this?
Sure.
All right, so
Thank you.
ma'am, we thank you for your comments. So, it'll be on the agenda for closed session. Council will be discussing it with our legal, and we'll return more comments to you soon, but it's something that we need to talk a little further about, so.
Thank
No
you.
further discussion at this time, correct? Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, continuing on then, City Attorney Pinckney, can you read the items for discussion during closed session?
Yes, the council will be meeting in closed session. Item number B1 is conference with real property negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8, and that concerns potential purchase of 826 Euclid Avenue, 802 Euclid Avenue, and then the APNs listed on the agenda. Item B2 will be conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, and that is the Reeves versus City of Beaumont matter listed on the agenda. Item B3, conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, and that's the Illapatafe versus City of Beaumont matters, both the state court action and the federal court action listed on the agenda. B4 is conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, and that's Omar Ochoa versus the City of Beaumont. B5 is conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, and that is Juan Gabriel Cazares versus the City of Beaumont. And then the final item, B6, is public employee performance evaluation pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, and the title of the employee is city manager.
All right, so thank you. Closed public comment at 5:10 PM.
Question for mayor and council. Do we expect that we may have reportable action from item 1 that Mrs. Ilaputafi might want to come back?
I doubt it. I
Okay.
think this is really just kind of a status report and also the opportunity for you all to meet and talk in light of the comments that were made this evening. But there won't be reportable action this evening.
Okay, thank you.
All right, before we go, we have one more question.
Yeah, I just want to know, do we come back, you're going to call her, or can you send her a letter in the mail?
Yeah, no, the staff will be contacting you further.
Okay,
All right, thank you for coming. Appreciate it. All right, so with that then, we will adjourn to closed session. Okay, we're returning from closed session. Mr. Peatney, can you give a report out, please?
Yes, the council met in closed session, item number B1, conference with real property negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8. And the property is at 826 Euclid Avenue and 802 Euclid Avenue, and the APN numbers listed in the agenda. There was no reportable action. Item B2, conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1. Megan Reeves versus the City of Beaumont. There was no reportable action taken in closed session. Item B3, conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, and this is the Illapatafe versus City of Beaumont matters in both state court and federal court. There was no reportable action taken in closed session. Item B4 was conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, and this is in the matter of Omar Ochoa versus the City of Beaumont. And there was reportable action. There was a motion to defend the case, and that motion was made by Councilmember Lara with a second by Councilmember Voigt. And the vote in favor of defending the matter was Mayor Martinez in favor, Mayor Pro Tem Fenn in favor, Councilmember Lara in favor, Councilmember White in favor, and Councilmember Voigt in favor. And then item B5 was conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation. And the matter of Juan Gabriel Cesares versus the City of Beaumont. There was reportable action on that item as well. There was a motion to defend the case, and that motion was made by Councilmember Lara with a second by Mayor Pro Tem Fenn. And the vote in favor of defending the matter was Mayor Martinez in favor, Mayor Pro Tem Fenn in favor, Councilmember Lara in favor, Councilmember White in favor, and Councilmember White in favor. And then the last item was B6. And that was public employee performance evaluation pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, and the title is the city manager. This was the beginning of the annual city manager evaluation process, and there was no reportable action. And that concludes the report out.
All right, thank you, Mr. Peatney. So with that, we will go into open session at 6:30 PM. This is the regular session of the City Council meeting of March 7th, 2023. Roll call, please.
Councilmember White,
Here.
Councilmember Voigt,
Here.
Councilmember Lara,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Fenn,
Here.
Mayor Martinez.
Here. We stand for the pledge. Councilmember Laura, would you lead us, please?
Please join me in our pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, are there any adjustments to the agenda, conflicts of interest, disclosures? Right. Seeing none, then that takes us to item E, the announcements, recognition, proclamations, and we have item E1 today, the Beaumont City Council disclosure training by Mr. Forbath. Welcome.
Oh, sorry. There you go. Try this one more. It's the third time's a charm. Good evening, Mayor Martinez, council members. Brian Forbath from Stradling, Yaka, Carlson, Routh. Pleasure to be here. It's been a couple years since I've been here since COVID. I've been on Zoom in a while, but it's the first time I've been back in person, and the remodel is fantastic. So congratulations to you all. It looks very nice, and those involved in it. So we're here tonight to do a short disclosure training for you all. I know some of you have been through this before in the past. I know some of you are newer and have not had the opportunity to have this training. But you're going to be presented in another meeting or two with an opportunity to approve the issuance of bonds for the first time in a couple years on behalf of Pardee, Tri-Point's sort of last development for their, I forget what the name of the exact development is, but it's their senior development in Pardee, in Beaumont. And we wanted to provide this training at a meeting that wasn't at the same meeting when you're approving the bond, just so you had a chance to think about it and not be pressed with it all at the same time. So I'll try to be brief and cut through this quickly this evening, but want to get to it. So just as a quick reminder, back in August of 2017, the Beaumont Financing Authority entered into a settlement agreement with the SEC in connection with some alleged securities law violations. Underneath the terms of that settlement agreement, the Beaumont Financing Authority did not pay any financial penalties, but it agreed to a number of undertakings, which included the establishment of written policies and procedures, periodic training, which this is, and regarding all aspects of material securities disclosures and the accounting of bond proceeds and record keeping. And as part of that settlement, the Beaumont Financing Authority entered into what we call a consent decree or a cease and desist order with the Securities and Exchange Commission. So as part of the settlement, the city was required to hire an independent consultant, which was a law firm by the name of Bradley, Arent, Bolton Cummings, and they conducted an independent review of the city's policies and procedures and how the city accounted for bond proceeds. And that independent consultant submitted a report to the council that was approved and accepted, and certain changes and updates were made to the city's policies and procedures that the city should go by. And this presentation here tonight has attached the cease and desist order, your settlement agreements attached as an exhibit, and also attached are a copy of the policies, the city's disclosure policies, and also this attachment C is a manual regarding how you should account for bond proceeds. These were all matters that were directly related to the SEC enforcement action. So the purpose of attaching them, just so that everybody has it in a handy spot, sometimes these were adopted 5 or 6 years ago before several of you were on the council, and just to make sure that they're handy and easy for everybody to view and review when they deem fit. So when do federal securities laws apply? Generally, they apply whenever the city of Beaumont is speaking to the market. And generally, you don't have a requirement to speak to the market, but when you do speak to the market, it has to be accurate and complete. Some examples of public statements are your preliminary official statements, which are your offering documents for your bonds that you have out there, your continuing disclosure filings that you're required to make in connection with your bond deals, your ACFRs, and then also press releases of the city, and then also sometimes statements that are made by public officials in certain settings can be deemed to be speaking to the market, like the state of the city addressed by the mayor in certain instances has been deemed to be speaking to the market. So we need to be cautious and careful about what we're saying in those instances. So the SEC sort of indirectly regulates the municipal securities market through a variety of rules and regulations, but the municipal issuers are subject to the anti-fraud rules, even though the city doesn't have to register its offerings with the SEC. Like a public company, before you go offer your public company stock, you have to register it with the SEC. Municipal bonds, you don't need to do that, but you have to comply with the anti-fraud rules. So the anti-fraud rules essentially say that when a municipal issuer releases information to the public that is reasonably expected to reach investors and trading aspects, such disclosure is subject to the anti-fraud provisions. And the fact that statements are not published for the purpose of informing securities markets does not alter the mandate that they not violate the anti-fraud rules. So what are the anti-fraud rules? Essentially, there's two main rules, and they're both enacted way back when in the Great Depression, the collapse of the stock market back then. But the main one is Rule 10b-5, which says that it shall be unlawful for any person to make any untrue statement of a material fact or to omit to state a material fact necessary in order to make the statements made in the light of the circumstances under which they were made, not misleading in connection with the purchase and sale of any security. And essentially what happens is every time the city is out in the market and issuing bonds, it provides a representation in your bond purchase contracts to the municipal underwriter, essentially mimicking those words, that we're not aware of any untrue statement or material fact that's in any of our offering documents. And so in order to violate Rule 10b-5, that requires a intentional or reckless act. But there's also Rule 17a, which the SEC can charge securities fraud based on a negligence standard, which is you knew or you should have known. And that was the 17a standard is what Beaumont entered into the settlement agreement way back when. And so there's also other rules that apply to municipal securities, and that's the continuing disclosure requirement. And essentially that says that any underwriter who's going to purchase securities from the city to sell in the market has to enter into a contract with the city of Beaumont to provide certain annual financial information. So that in other words, if I buy a bond, I'm relying on Beaumont to provide certain annual financial information so I can judge how my bond's doing. And without that, it's really sort of in the dark. Those annual financial statements also require the notice of certain material events within a certain time period. If there's draw on a reserve fund, there's a bankruptcy or a rating change, you have to file those in a certain period of times. There's also some recent amendments to the Rule 15C212 that requires the city to disclose certain financial obligations that it would enter into if material. And some of this is probably beyond the scope of today's training, but it's in the presentation here if you're curious, want to look at it. But another key takeaway from all this is that the SEC requires that in connection with any offering document, you have to disclose any failures that the city has had in the previous last 5 years to comply with its continuous disclosure obligations. And this is what the Beaumont settled on with the SEC, was that your previous offering documents didn't adequately or just correctly disclose past failures of the city to file its continuous disclosure reports as required. So in all of City Beaumont's recent disclosure filings, there's been great painstaking care to make sure that our statements are true about Beaumont's compliance with the continuous disclosure obligations. And when we go do our next bond issuance, the underwriters will actually prepare an independent third-party report that'll show all of the city's requirements to comply with continuous disclosure, and it'll have like a checkbox about whether you complied or not. And we always diligence that with the underwriter and city staff. So when we're talking about you got to disclose all material facts, what is material? The materiality standard sort of purposely remains opaque by the SEC, but it's clear that's a very materially low bar for what is material. Materiality has generally been defined as a substantial likelihood that a reasonable investor would consider it important in an investment decision, or that viewed by a reasonable investor as having significantly altered the total mix of available information out there. And so in practice, the SEC takes a very subjective view of materiality. It's, Monday morning quarterback looking back, you should have known that this was going to be material. And so material sort of depends on what sort of financing you're doing. In a community facilities district, CFD financing, obviously information about the developer, the development, their entitlements, the value of the property is important. In the city's wastewater financing that it did, all that stuff's not really material, but what's material is what's the capacity of the plant you're building, the average daily flow, what are your rates and charges and stuff like that. So you have to sort of look at the total mix of what the security is that you're issuing and make sure that you're providing all material information. Again, you've hired a team of professionals to advise you and help you along the way, but the SEC has said that issuers and principals are ultimately accountable for the accuracy of the statements of fact, and that you can't delegate that responsibility to lawyers, accountants, and others. You're ultimately responsible for it. In the event of a misstatement, the reliance on advice of professionals only serves as a defense in limited circumstances. And then the presence of counsel doesn't necessarily equate to advice of counsel. So just because I'm in the room doesn't mean that I've advised you on the topic. You have to ask for specific advice on the topic. So again, the city's adopted very robust disclosure policies. Just to highlight a few aspects of it, again, that was adopted on March 6, 2018, and establishes processes and governing principles, for ensuring accuracy of disclosures. It requires hiring outside disclosure counsel in connection with any offering, which is what Stradling's been able to provide that service to you for the last several years. It requires periodic training to be coordinated by the city manager. So every year, annually, I do training with the city staff. We've done training before for the city council once or twice before, but it's been some time. That's why I thought it was appropriate to do it again. Then the policy also contains details on, annual continuous disclosure requirements and, when you need to file your reports and what information needs to be in it. And then, the city finance director is responsible for preparing and filing the annual reports and material events notices. And, she does get assistance from outside third parties to help in that. So again, what's an SEC enforcement action look like? You guys know about this, but just to remind everybody, the SEC's got a municipal securities and public pension unit. They've sort of established strict liability for compliance. Recent cases have sought financial penalties, individual accountability, and really bad cases, parallel criminal charges, admission of wrongdoing. And then again, public statements outside of the offering materials or continuous disclosure agreements have also been deemed to be speaking to the marketplace in recent actions. again, it's not litigation, it's an investigation. The SEC's got an active whistleblower program that does pay bounties. They got broad document subpoena powers. Again, when they came to Beaumont, the subpoena was for every document that relates to a bond, essentially. And we had to sort of help carve that back. So they've got teams of lawyers, accountants with no protections the court offered. There's no designated timeline or budget, and they can provide personal subpoenas to officials and staff for documents. And again, what really was the benefit in the previous action with the SEC was City of Beaumont's cooperation and credibility were paramount on that. I mean, it was very much the case in the previous investigation that City of Beaumont was very much a victim in all of this to the then staff who handled a lot of all of this. And, the city staff, city council, and that connection took a very proactive view of that, we're going to cooperate with the SEC and make this all happen, resolve this. And it worked well for the city in that aspect. So SEC settlements can take numerous forms, usually enter a cease and desist order. There could be financial penalties, industry bars for individuals. That happened to some of the previous Beaumont officials. Continuing, compliance undertakings, hire consultants, and then cooperation against others under investigation. And then you gotta, there's a requirement to state that you have a cease and desist order in all of your bond documents going forward for some period of time. So we've done that consistently. Another key aspect of just disclosure in general is privilege. Maintaining attorney-client privilege can be highly inconvenient on a day-to-day basis. Investment bankers and developers are not part of sort of the tree of privilege that you have with your city attorney and with us. And also financial advisors are not either unless their advice is necessary to the legal advice is being given. And this is important because it gets really costly to review documents involving lawyers to determine whether privilege applies. And then also just, insurance is important to understand part of all of this should this rise again. That was it. I tried to keep it short. I know it wasn't sweet, but more than happy to answer any questions that you all have. Again, I think the important thing is that we've had this training and that the attachments, the policies and procedures, which you may not be aware of, are attached, and you have them now as copies. And I'll see you all in another week or two, or another meeting or two for the next bond deal. But
That's right. Well, thank you. We appreciate it. Do we have any comments or questions from council? We do. Councilmember White.
Can you just expand on the individual accountability comment? Because I think I was surprised when I learned that we are responsible as each council member knowing what is put into our disclosure document.
yeah, I mean, the SEC has specifically said that you all as council members have sort of a unique position in the city in terms of knowing sort of what potentially is going on a different level than staff, and that the council has an obligation to review the official statements and comment on it. And that in instances, there's been a number of instances where individual council members, not necessarily for not reviewing an official statement, but have gone out and made statements to the public in ways that were inaccurate and half-truths and so forth. And in those instances, individual council members or mayor has been found to be violating federal securities laws and held individually accountable.
Thank you, Mayor. That's all I had.
I do have a question for that. Is there a termination date to the settlement agreement?
No.
Oh, so it's,
Yeah.
okay, so it
Yeah.
keeps on going.
Keeps on going, yeah. At some point, we won't need to disclose it in all of our offering documents, but for the time being, we will need to, so.
Very well. Do we have public comment on this?
I have no written comments. Rudy, do we have any callers on the line?
I have no callers on the line.
All right, with that, anything from staff that would like to add? No? We appreciate your time,
Thank
very
you.
concise, thank you. We'll see you again. All right, so with that, that takes us to item F, the public comment period. Do we have public comment?
I have no requests. Rudy, any callers on the line?
I have no callers on the line.
Okay, with that, we go to item G, consent calendar. Do we have any items that wish to be pulled for discussion by council? Right, do we have any there's no callers online, there's no one in the audience to speak to consent calendar, so then we'll ask for a motion.
Mayor, I'll move to approve the consent calendar items G1 through G7.
I'll second.
Roll call?
Councilmember White,
Yes.
Councilmember Voigt,
Yes.
Councilmember Lara,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Fenn,
Yes.
Mayor Martinez.
Yes. Brings us to item H. This is a new thing for our agenda, so I just want to explain that real quickly. So item H is the Youth Council report. So Youth Council meetings are on the second Tuesday of the month. So they will follow the first Tuesday of the month meeting from council. So the intention was to, or is to, ask the council if they have any direction or questions they would like the youth council to discuss at their next meeting, so that we can take that to them, have them discuss, and then have them report back to our meeting on our second Tuesday, second meeting of the month. So that allows them to hear what we have to say and come back as a group or individuals to report back. So that is the purpose. Anything from staff? Good? Okay, so at this time, then I'll ask, I think you had a comment on something that the council might be able to discuss.
Yeah, absolutely. There was some information sent out by the Supervisor Gutierrez about a call for students and participation in a regional capacity for the government. So I just thought it might have been a good opportunity if we had a volunteer or somebody who may want to sit on more of a regional committee as a student. So I thought maybe you guys could discuss that.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Boyd's referring to the YAC. That's the Youth Council Commission that the county has. And we actually do have some members that are on that committee as well. So we'll continue to discuss that with them. I also talked to Congressman Ruiz lately, and he's looking for possible internships during the summer as well. And so we'll bring that up and discuss that as well. I'd like to get their input on Stewart Park, just from a youth point of view. If council's okay with that, staff can provide us with the latest on that. I know it's modifying, but that latest on design, it'd be kind of nice to give their input, especially on the skate park and that kind of stuff.
Mayor, would you like us to do a presentation next Tuesday to them?
Let's discuss that and see on time, because we're trying to limit the meetings to about an hour, hour and a half, and I don't have elections to do. So it's possible, but I definitely want them to have a short discussion on that, so.
Okay, because we'll need to put it on the agenda.
Yeah, of course. Anything else from council? Yes, Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, thank you. This might be something for staff maybe to find out, but if there's any kind of volunteer opportunities that teenagers can help with the city, that perhaps this youth council can help coordinate and advertise, within the school and so forth. And so if there's not any now, fine, but if we have something or a need comes up that they could fill, that we run it through that council.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember White?
I would like to add to that. We had the discussion at Economic Development Committee with a representative from the school district about us participating in their internship program. So maybe bring that up.
Oh, good.
So that, this council could, the youth council could work on organizing and providing input and feedback on that process.
Okay, and as a part of that, the youth council is appointing their representative to the EDC as well in that meeting. So that we'll have a student, a rep on that. Okay, very well. That's a pretty good little meeting there. So thank you for that. And so the intention is to have them kind of come back and talk to us a little bit and get them more involved. So they're excited. We lost a few members. One moved and the other had a time commitment issue. So I think we're down to 8, I think now, 7 or 8. But that's good. It's a good start. Okay, thank you for that. That'll move us to item I, Public hearings, approval of all ordinances and resolutions to be read by title only. Item I-1, public hearing and consideration of the resolution adopting an updated user fee schedule. And we have a staff report. Ms. Eustachian?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Can you hear me? So we started discussing fees in September of 2022. Revenue and Cost Specialists, RCS, prepared a fee study for us. And what they do is they look at all the services that the city provides, and they determine if the fees that we are collecting are recovering the full cost of those services, or if we are subsidizing some of those with taxes. So we brought the report back in September. RCS does suggest that any type of personal choice service is paid for by a fee that will fully cover those costs, but council can decide to subsidize any fees that they choose to in the schedule. In December, council and staff discussed fees, possible fees related to Community Services Department, including sports field rentals and facility rentals. And then that item was brought back in January, where council adopted a sports field policy handbook that would assist Community Services Department when they are collecting these types of fees. On February 7th, we brought back a schedule for proposed fee changes. Those did not include any of the recreation fees, but they included all other user fees that were in that schedule. So for this evening, you have a resolution that's attached, and there are two exhibits to that resolution. And Exhibit B that was a part of the packet when it went to print for the agenda, there's a portion of that exhibit that is not complete. You have all been passed out the complete exhibit, and we also have put it in the box in the back of the room. And so that's just to let you know that that exhibit does now have any of the new fees, and which are included as fire fees and recreation fees. We did do the required notices for public hearing. And the recommendation for the effective date for all of these fees, changes, and the new fees would be July 1st. And the reason why we're recommending July 1st is, number one, that's the beginning of the fiscal year, and so it's easier to track the fees when you start them at the beginning of the fiscal year, as well as it also gives staff time to go back and update all of our software and our systems to update the new fees, make sure that there's any changes, do testing to make sure that it's accurately working the way it's supposed to. The fiscal impact for this is that, RCS has determined that it could be up to $702,300 for collection of the change of fees and new fees, but that also depends on the actual services that are performed and what we collect. So it's kind of undetermined, but that's a guesstimate amount of what we could receive from the changes of the fees. And then, so the recommended action is to go ahead and have the public hearing, but staff is recommending to continue the hearing. That way, in the interest of the public, that everyone has a time to review that Exhibit B that was cut off, and that they can take, really digest it, look through it, make sure that there's no issues with it, and we can continue that into the next city council date. And with that, I'm available for any questions. We have RCS on the line. They are available for questions, and staff as well.
All right, thank you for that. So with that, I will open the public hearing at 6:56 PM. And do we have public comment?
I have no written comments. Rudy, do we have any callers on the line?
I have no callers on the line.
Okay, and did you say that you wish to continue?
Let me explain a little bit further. So the appendix that's in the actual packet was cut off when it was printed. However, the public notice that was published in the newspaper referred any interested party to the city's website where a full detailed list was uploaded. However, in the interest of transparency, if I'm a citizen, I'm going to be looking at the packet and not necessarily the website. And so Ms. Eustachian and I got together and decided that to be on the safe side and to make sure that everybody has the full fee schedule that normally they would go to the packet to review, we'd like to continue the public hearing, leave it open. If anybody has any comments in the next 2 weeks, we will take those in and we'll bring them back to council, and you can close the public hearing at that time.
Okay, that makes full sense, and I am in total agreement. But we do have time for discussion and questions. So let's see what we have. If we have, Mayor Pro Tem?
Just a quick question. How often do we expect to do this in the future? Is it it's not a yearly thing, but is it every 3-5 years? Every
It is
5?
recommended for that, yes, correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councilmember Lar?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a great direction that we're going into, allows for improved cost recovery. One of the things I'd like to see on the schedule that we have, if it's possible to add one small column that has like an F and a D, one F for flat fee, D for deposit, so you kind of know what you're looking for at a glance. The ones that say deposit obviously are obvious that they're deposit, but there are other ones that look like they should be deposit based on the type of work that you're doing, but they appear to be flat fee. The other is, when I start looking at deposit-based fees, I get a little PTSD because of some of the things that we went to in my former career. One of the things you really want to make sure is that you have buy-in from staff, because it's going to require timesheet entry. Daily is going to be key so that you can maintain your balances and accurate accounting. Also, on refunds, that's going to be an automated process. I know it'll take time. Once the account is closed, obviously, we used to have a 45-day process to finalize accounting, and then we would automatically send out a refund check. Is that, I'm assuming that's going to be the process here, something similar to that?
Right. At this time, we don't have a formal policy adopted, but that would be something that we include as we work on the deposit policy that will go to finance and audit and ultimately come to council. But depending on the type of project, whether it's a planning project or public works project, it's going to depend on, I can speak for planning's process, when is it approved? What is the appeal period? The scale of the project has a lot to do with it. Are we still receiving invoices, whether they're from legal or from consultants or, any number of things? So once all those things have been identified, after the project has been approved or denied, whatever the case may be, then it could be anywhere from 60 days to even up to maybe 180 days, depending on what the appeal
Okay.
period is.
Okay. Talking about planning cases, planning would, because we'll probably carry the lion's share of the work in some instances, because with planning cases, they're charged by multiple departments. I want to make sure that it's clear by those departments that are charging those cases that they're entering their time daily. That entering your time on planning cases is just as important as getting your comments back in a timely manner, so these cases can move forward, they don't get overdrawn. One of the things that happened in the county was staffing ended up being an issue, because you had to monitor these accounts. So one of the benefits, though, of doing this way is that additional staffing can be picked up by an adjustment in the fully burdened rate of those that charge against cases. So that's one plus, should we need to go down that road. We also what would happen is work would stop on projects because they're overdrawn. Developers would come back and ask for the county to do trust accounts for the developers. I would suggest that we don't touch those and don't even consider those types of requests. And the reason I suggest that is because we end up monitoring the developer's trust. We end up drawing the money out. And so there's always a concern with questions in that regard. Also, just making sure that we monitor the accounts. It has to be done on a daily basis, in my opinion. Obviously, we were handling a larger number of cases, but as we move forward, and obviously we'll get better at what we do and how we go through the process. I am really excited about this. It does give me a little bit of cause for concern, but obviously I trust staff and their abilities to handle that. So that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember White?
Yeah, I can attest to Mike's excitement about the fees. It's all he's been talking about for a long time. But, so when you said that some of it didn't make into package, and you mentioned Exhibit B, but I think somewhere I thought I saw that it was, it's more than just the recreation fees, right? But it included the recreation fees.
Correct,
right.
so if you look at page, sorry. It ends with miscellaneous, and that's what's missing, it's some of the fire fees. So the recreation fees were cut off, and then the rest of the fire fees.
Okay.
It was a formatting issue with the print.
Okay. And so are these all a certain category of fees, or is it all the fees that we have to, I mean, does your fee study cover everything?
Covers all user fees.
Yeah, except diff fees.
Okay,
Not
and
development.
not TOTs? That's a whole separate analysis, or is it?
TOT is a
TOT.
tax, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. And do we have an Airbnb fee?
No, we do not.
We do not. Okay.
I'm assuming you're referring to a short-term rental?
Yes, sorry.
No,
Yes,
we-
short-term rental fees. We don't
Yes.
have those, because I know other cities are picking those up now. And with Coachella and Stagecoach, I would imagine there's some opportunity there.
In Councilmember White, that would be a tax as well.
That would be a tax, okay. Okay. Well, I'll wait till future agenda items to discuss that. So when we had the recreation fee discussion before, we had a full house here, and we had a lot of people frustrated and upset with us. And at the time, we up here, I think, suggested that we get some feedback and input sort of organized from league management. Did that go anywhere? No?
Say that again.
I thought we were gonna ask the league management to meet with us about and give us feedback and input on the fees.
League,
The
Cal
leagues,
Cities?
the different leagues.
The sports
Oh,
leagues.
sports leagues.
I think it's
Sorry.
me.
Yeah.
I got
I'm thinking Cal
you.
Cities.
I'm
No,
here
no.
for you.
Yes. Doug can give you an update on that.
Okay.
I'm here. So after we had our meeting, we did conduct a meeting with all of our sports leagues and all of our user groups. So all of our nonprofit groups, all of our travel teams. Everybody came together, adult and youth. And the first thing we did was we went through the handbook that was approved by council, just so that everyone was clear. At the meeting, there was a couple of groups that I met with after I had talked and kind of walked them through a few things, just to clarify a few things with them. And so we all went through it. Everyone understood what the allocation plan was and how fields were going to be given and priorities and groups and all that type of stuff. And then the second half of the meeting was discussing fees and helping everyone understand, first and foremost, the purpose of the fees, why we have those fees to begin with, how we're going to track those fees once they come in terms of maintenance towards the field. And I handed out a sheet to each individual group on what the implications would be with the recommended fees that we brought to council that night, which was a $5 for Group 2 and everything that's in Exhibit B tonight. And so we went through that together, discussed it, helped everyone understand what their fees would be. We talked about ways to reduce that number if they so choose, talking about blanket reservations and how we calculated that number and stuff. So we left that meeting and I gave everyone a couple of days to sleep on it and see how they felt. I checked in with them and emailed everybody and just said, hey, the meeting felt good to me. If, speak now or forever hold your peace, that type of stuff. I said, if you have comments, please talk to me offline or text me individually. And everyone either reached back and said, we're good, we appreciate the time, or didn't reach out to me after that request. And so it felt good. I brought that to Elizabeth and to Jennifer as well and said, I feel like everyone has their thing. I also offered all of our leagues that if they wanted me to attend a board meeting so that I could explain this to a broader group of decision makers for the leagues, that I was willing to do that. They just needed to coordinate that with my schedule. And that's still an offer that I have for all of my leagues, that they know that I can go do that. So we decided that it would be worth it to include these recreation fees with the total master fee schedule for the entire city.
Okay. Were they aware that we would be, discussing these tonight as opposed to having to figure it out in the newspaper that we were gonna?
I did reach out to the leagues and say, hey, look at the agenda. This is stuff that's going to be going on. And now that we're going to continue, if we go that route, I'll do it again and just to make sure so that they know.
Perfect, thank you. That's
Yes,
all
no
I had.
Councilmember Voigt?
Yeah, I just had one other point of clarification, Doug. I do note that we have included these as all fees now. There's not really a distinction between adult or, do you want to just kind of speak to that a little bit, or?
On the Exhibit B,
Yeah, I just think on the, if I remember correctly, on the ball fields, previously we had it separated for youth and for adult, and I think there was a move, if I remember.
correct. So we are going to, there still will be a distinction for adults. So adults will have a different level in their grouping. So when they apply for us to get a field allocation, we will give them either a Group 2 status, which is for youth nonprofits, or we will give them, if they were an adult league or if they were not a nonprofit status, then we would give them that rate as well.
Based off of the residency, correct?
Correct, yes. And then we still have, that's part of our manual as well now, is we're going to be doing an audit for 80% residency.
Excellent, thank you.
Councilmember Lara? follow-up?
Yeah, just really quick, Mr. Story, just wanted to compliment you on the efforts that you had put into sitting down with these. I know you were at multiple meetings. None of them were short.
None of my meetings are short.
Yeah, well, but you did put in a lot of effort
I appreciate
to basically to explain what the workbook was, because I think what a lot of people were getting was what was floating around on social media, which was inaccurate. And so I really appreciate the efforts that you put forth in making sure everybody understood that. Thank you.
Thanks, I appreciate it, thank you.
And Mr. Story, there's not going to be a stepped approach to the fee schedule, right, for either the facilities or for the ball field? It's just all going to start on July 1st?
That is the recommendation, and for the sports leagues, it wouldn't happen until their fall season. So they've got a little bit of extra runway before they take off.
Okay. And then my last question refers probably to Ms. Eustachian. So the staff report mentions a revenue amount. Just for clarification for public, that we're not making money on these fees, they're cost recovery fees.
Cost recovery, correct.
Right, and I just want to clarify for public on that. All right, so then that brings us to, are we going to continue the public hearing? Do we have any discussion on that request by staff?
Yeah, yeah.
Do we need a motion to continue?
Yes,
I'll
Mr.
move
Mayor?
to continue
to
this,
March 21st.
continue this item to March 21st.
I'll second.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. Okay. Roll call?
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Voigt?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Fenn?
Yes.
Mayor Martinez?
Yes. All right, that brings us to item J. We are on action items. J1, the request to approve a purchase of restroom modular for Police Department, capital improvement project number PS 08.
I know, I like to stand, but I'm here.
You need to get that cushy chair.
I'll take it, I'll take it. Evening, Mayor and Council. And so before you, I just bring a staff report indicating that the police department, as we've grown out of our facility numerous times over, we're in need of some more restrooms. And we put together 3 quotes. Mobile modular was the best option for us. It's a trailer, it'll be balanced out, connected to an existing sewer lateral, and it'll greatly increase our capacity for our public safety staff to be able to have bathroom facility options available to them. And so I request the recommended action, approve the purchase of the modular restrooms from Mobile Modular in the amount of $89,262.53. And with that, I can answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Chief. Do we have public comment on this item?
I have no written requests. Rudy, do we have any callers on the line?
I have no callers on the line.
All right, bring it up to council discussion or a motion. We do have discussion. Looks like Councilmember Lara, question?
Chief, where are we setting this? Is this going to be set on concrete? Because I know we've had some issues out there with the soil.
Yeah, this will be put on gravel. We currently have some connexes, boxes that we're going to move, so it's pretty level. It's been compacted through the time with the connex, so it's got some considerable weight. It
Okay.
is trailered, it is wheels, and then it is balanced out.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chief.
You're welcome.
Mayor Pro Tem Finn?
Any setup fees or anything are going to be something under the dollar amount limit that doesn't need to come back to council, correct?
Correct. So this is the delivery fee. Everything's included in that. There'll be some fees we put in here. Let's see, the in-house fees of approximately $5,000 for city employees to connect the trailer to the lateral.
Okay.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem, just to elaborate on that, the in-house staff fees will be charged to the capital improvement project. It won't come out of their operations budget.
Councilmember White?
Mayor, I move to approve the purchase of the modular restrooms from Mobile Modular in the amount of $89,262.53.
I'll second.
Roll call?
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Voight?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Fenn?
Yes.
Mayor Martinez?
Yes. Brings us to item J2, approve a purchase order to Game Time, a play court company, for a new playground at Shadow Creek Park in an amount not to exceed $196,866.14 from Capital Improvement Project Number P-16. Staff report, Mr. Story.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm really excited to just share with you this project and some of the things that we're going to be offering for our residents here. This is the purchase for a new playground. This playground is going to be going at Shadow Creek, which is right off of San Mateo Canyon. And we're really excited. We applied for a grant, and we were able to receive a grant that allowed us to get a discounted playground. That's a special type of playground, and this is what we're calling an inclusive playground. And it's been a really fun process for me and my staff to go through because it's been an opportunity for us to learn just about some of the other types of options that we have for our community. A lot of times when you see a playground, it might be designed for a specific type of kids, and I've been frequently going to playgrounds for many years with my boys, and when they go, they play a certain way, and they like to try to break things and be wild and rambunctious and crazy. They're just boys, and they just run and do all that stuff. And Game Time has really brought an opportunity in a program to offer types of amenities that we can include in our playgrounds that appeal to the whole child, that appeal to many different types of kids who might be wanting to go to a park or to get outside for different types of reasons. And so that's what an inclusive playground is all about. The idea is that it's a playground that will allow many different types of children with many different types of needs, some of those special needs, to be able to experience the playground, to have a fun time in the playground, to connect with family, to connect with friends while at the playground. And so we're excited to offer this first type of inclusive playground. During this process, we went out to Shadow Creek and we did a pop-up in the park, and we asked the residents and some of the users, what would you like to see here? And there was a couple of things that came up in that process. If you're familiar with Deanna's Past Kids organization, a nonprofit organization in our community, they specialize in serving the special needs community. We specifically invited them out to this pop-up in the park because we wanted to hear from them and some of their families that they serve in our community. And so we talked about accessibility. We talked about how kids can maneuver on the playground. And so right now, this specific staff report is to just purchase the equipment. I'll be coming back for another opportunity to bring before you a request to purchase a special type of surfacing. So one of the requests and comments that was made was about the safety surfacing, that we instead go away from a wood chip or a rubber chip that we have in some of our other playgrounds in the city to do a specific pour and play, which is much more maneuverable for wheelchairs and for special devices. And so we heard those requests from our community, and we came back to you recently with an a budget amendment, and council, you guys agreed to put more money into this project so that we could purchase that safety surfacing. So we're going to be coming back for that and the install at a later time. But right now, we want to get this equipment ordered and hopefully delivered to us in a timely manner. So we're excited. Some of the, in this initiative, in this inclusive playground design, they have different pillars and ideas, and just so you know, and so you can have some talking points with the community, I wanted to share them. They're in your staff report, but the idea of this playground design is that we design it in a way that we be fair, we be included, we be smart, we be independent, we be safe, we be active, and we be comfortable. So this is going to be a fun opportunity. There's musical instruments that are attached in here. There's special types of swings for kids who need to transfer from a wheelchair into the amenity. There's certain types of swings that are facing each other so that kids can have interaction with each other and stuff. And so it's some really fun stuff. I'm really excited for this. And when we do install it, we'll have a fun ribbon cutting for everyone to come out there. And so we are asking for council to approve a purchase order to Game Time for the new playground over at Shadow Creek, which does include some shade elements in the playground as well. So we'll keep the kids out of the heat. That is for an amount not to exceed $196,866.14, and that is being charged to CIP P16.
Thank you for that. Public comment?
I have no written comments. Rudy, do we have any callers on the line?
I have no callers on the line.
I will say I did attach in the staff report some support letters from Deanna's past kids, and so you guys, as council, you could all see those as well. And if you wanted to read those were some comments that I received.
I think your approach is awesome. It's something that's thinking out of the box, and it's, it's very expensive, so I understand. Of course, we can't do all-inclusive everywhere, but to have at least one nice, good, and all-inclusive is really, I'm proud to have that. Any council discussion? Councilmember White?
I'll move to approve a purchase order to Game Time for playground equipment in the amount of $196,866.14 allocated to CIP number P16.
I'll second.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Voigt?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Fenn?
Yes.
Mayor Martinez?
Yes. Brings us to item J3, the agreement for purchase of mitigation bank credits associated with capital improvement program number 2017-009, the Pennsylvania Avenue widening. The staff report. Looks like Mr. Hart.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Council. So just briefly, last August, Council adopted the environmental document for the Pennsylvania widening project. It was a mitigated negative declaration and the associated mitigation monitoring reporting plan, MMRP. One of those mitigation measures, which was Bio2, required the city to offset permanent impacts to some riparian resources by purchasing reestablishment credits. At the time, there were no reestablishment credits available, so in order to keep the Pennsylvania project moving, we brought forth an item in November to allow a letter of credit to satisfy that obligation. Since that time, credits have become available from the River Park Mitigation Bank, and so this is merely changing. The letter of credit was established at a not to exceed amount of $96,000 to an actual purchase agreement in the amount of $80,000. In your staff report, there is a funding summary as well as a budget summary. And with that, the recommended action is to authorize the mayor to execute an agreement for the sale of credits in an amount of $80,000 for mitigation bank credits associated with the Pennsylvania widening project. Happy to answer questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. We have public comment.
I have no written requests. Rudy, do we have any callers on the line?
I have no callers on the line.
Okay, questions from council? Councilmember White?
Just one quick one. So we've already approved the $96,000 for the letter of credit, correct? And so you're just asking us to approve $16,000 less, $80,000?
Correct. The $96,000 that was approved for the letter of credit is not needed, and this will replace that.
Okay. Okay, thank you. That's all I had, Mayor.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to authorize the mayor to execute an agreement for sale of credits in the amount of $80,000 for the purchase of mitigation bank credits associated with CIP 2017-009 Pennsylvania Avenue widening.
I'll second that.
Roll call?
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Voigt?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Finn?
Yes.
Mayor Martinez?
Yes. Bring us to item J4, the discussion and direction on sending a legislative delegation to Washington DC and Sacramento. Staff report, City
Good
Manager
evening.
Gibbs.
Good evening again. So at the last meeting, council awarded a contract to David Turch and Associates, who is now officially your federal lobbyist. And in that contract award, council asked that a discussion item come back to talk about delegations to Washington DC and Sacramento. Sacramento is April 12th through the 14th, and it's hosted by Cal Cities. There's a leaders summit, if you will, along with meetings with legislators and different departments. In discussions with David Turch and Associates, it is recommended, and included in your packet is the House calendar. It is recommended that council consider sending a delegation to DC the last week in April. The week of April 25th, they will be in session. And there is money in your budget that has been approved for the Washington DC trip. And then additional funding is included in the budget for council that wants to travel to Sacramento in April as well. So it's recommended that council discuss the two trips, appoint members to the delegation, and then confirm the dates of attendance for each trip. And then what we'll do is we'll work with our different lobbyists to put a package together for that delegation to take. And I can tell you that we've already submitted community benefit funding packages to Senator Padilla in DC. His deadline was last Friday, and it was a rather quick deadline. And so our lobbyist, we worked with our federal lobbyist, Turch and Associates, and we sent 3 separate requests for the community benefit. They used to call it earmark. And that was 2nd Street Extension, Potrero Interchange, and Pennsylvania grade separation. We're doing the same thing with Ruiz and Feinstein's office as well. So just so you know that that information's already been submitted to the lobbyist, and they've already sent it on to Padilla.
Okay, thank you for that. Do we have public comments?
I have no written requests. Rudy, do we have any callers on the line?
I have no callers on the line.
Okay, thank you. So before we start discussion with council, I wanted Mr. Pinckney to chime in. One of my concerns and that I had was the quorum issue and sending a large delegation out of the area where discussion might occur. So if you can just quickly give us your opinion on that. It is in the staff report, but I thought you'd follow up with that as well.
So there are 2 ways you could do it. One is you could have it as a notice meeting, which probably isn't very practical to do that. Or you can have the whole council go, but then they would break up into groups for the meeting so that you don't have the whole council. And then if a group of 2 council members meets with a representative, they wouldn't, be relaying necessarily what was said by the other council members. It would just be independent meetings. And then the other option is, sending less than a quorum. So, and that avoids the issue altogether.
Okay, so with that, we'll open it up to discussion. We'll start with Councilmember. Oh, was it an answer?
I thought I'd wait.
Well, so then I'll chime in then. So basically, the original idea was to send the mayor as legislation delegate and a second council member to either or both. This way we avoided the quorum issue, and we had 2 that could attend the meetings. I am scheduled for the Sacramento meeting already. That was done a long time ago before this ever came up. So that one is set, and I have my stuff set up with the league and everything for that Sacramento trip. So I just wanted to disclose that. For the Washington trip, I don't know if I can attend the full time. We're looking at about a 4 or 5 day commitment
It really depends on the elected official's schedule and when we can get in with them. It can be anywhere from 3 to 4 days, because included in those meetings, while we're back there, we want to meet with agencies. And those would be the staff assigned to those agencies. So we want to make it a full packed trip.
So what I was, so I do have the ability to go, and what I was hoping is that we can discuss something about a second or however many we decide, to have like an overlap, so that the 2 days that I can attend and the other one can come in or whoever, to maybe cover the other 2 days that I'm not there. That was kind of my idea, but I wanted to hear from council to see who else was interested, so we can get a number, and then if we have a number larger than 2, then we can discuss how we want to go about that. So that was my first consideration. So go ahead, you remember now?
No, I knew, I just wanted to see if anyone else wanted to go
well, then,
first.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, I would, I think there's an advantage to taking at least 2 council members to all the number of days. I personally do not want to go to Sacramento, but I would love to go to DC.
Okay, so let me start this little list here, and I'm sure clerk is also with me as well. All right, so we have Mr. White to consider for Washington, not Sacramento. Okay, Mayor Pro Tem?
Please put me down for both, and if there's multiple people going to DC, I'd be willing to cover the days that you are not there.
Okay, Councilmember Voigt?
Please consider me for DC. I will not be able to attend in Sacramento.
Okay, and Councilmember Lara?
I'd like to go ahead and attend the DC, but not Sacramento.
Okay. All right, so let's start with Sacramento first. That's easier. So I do have my setup. So if Mr. Finn, if you're interested, we can talk about setting you up with the league. They have their conference. So it's a conference/summit. So you'd be going to the league. There's some training, some workshops, and then we work in the schedule with the legislators. Is that something that might work for you?
Yes, sir.
Are you real aware of the dates?
Yes.
Okay, and that would work for you?
Yep.
Okay, so if council doesn't have any concern about that, we do have concern? Is this comments on this? No? Okay, so if no one has concerns about that, then we'll, if we can agree on that with consensus, we'll go with that. Okay, so that's done. Now, the Washington item. So let's have comment.
So I have a question about that.
Okay.
So there really is no disadvantage to taking as many council members who want to go. I mean, it gives us the ability to split up a little bit more and cover more area.
Divide and conquer.
Other than we have to be cognizant of the Brown Act issues and that kind of thing. But I think if we send more, I don't see how that's a disadvantage.
All right, so for the public and for legal, I'd clarify that there will never be more than 2 council members meeting with a representative at any one time.
Right, so if you have a quorum of the council and your meeting discuss city business or an issue of concern to the city, then that would constitute a meeting. So you just have to, if you're traveling over there, you gotta make sure you're not talking about city business if there's a quorum present, or having a series of meetings, and then when you're over there, it would just be 2 people meeting
Okay, so.
at any given moment.
All right, so we can hear more comment on that and then decide, we can see how that staggered schedule could look like and so forth.
Mr. Mayor, can I suggest that, and just get input on this, that if we make assignments, then if we pair off, then maybe we stay paired. And that might help keep us on task.
And I would recommend that because you're going to be giving critical information in front of elected officials, and you really want to know your information. And if you change your presentation, you may get things confused. Some of these presentations can be technical, especially when we're talking about transportation infrastructure.
So are you envisioning then 2 council members with 1 or 2 staff members as well, so maybe a 4 team? Because I know we don't want to go in too large that overwhelms the legislator or the representative. So
And their
4
meeting rooms are pretty small.
Yeah, and they're usually pretty small, so two council, 2 staff, I think is reasonable. So we
Yep.
have this
What I'm recommending as far as staff is myself, Deputy City Manager, and Public Works.
Okay. All right. Okay, so I got that going, and then I just wanted to mention, it becomes critical then for the dinners and stuff that we meet, that we're not discussing what was said by the reps, and that at some point, we will have to put it probably on agenda so that we can come back and report out. So it'll be a report out like we usually do for anything else. But it's very critical that in the public eye that we be careful on how I think it's a great idea to send everybody. I'm okay with that. Legal, we can give some more suggestions on what may be great and what may not. Maybe we'll stagger the way up. Maybe we'll, do some things. We'll hear that in a second. But it's very, it puts us in a weird position because I think in the consultant said, it's really powerful to have a big presence, but because of our things that we need to follow, we need to be careful with what we, show the public, because I don't want someone misconstruing the whole idea of what we're going for. So that's my opinion, but let's hear more comment, though. More comment? Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, you're good?
I wanted to hear back.
Okay. So, Mr. Pinckney, can you give us any more opinion? If it sounds like council wants to go up all 5, then give us your comments and opinions on, you already did. Is there going to be a difference if we all go on the same plane? Would you prefer, in your opinion, that we go separately? How?
I think that the key is, for example, the council's, there's express exceptions to the Brown Act meeting definition that allows the council to go to League of California Cities conferences. There are exceptions that allow you to go to sort of ceremonial events or non-city business events, as long as you don't get together and start talking about city business. That's the key.
So the highest level of ethic conduct, and professionalism, and I'm comfortable with that. And I do want to mention to the public, so, we're spending quite a bit on a consultant for DC. We know that there's money in infrastructure coming up. Biden's plan's got a lot of that, and we've talked to Ruiz already about that, and he's told us, what his opinion is and how to start talking to people. So it's critical that we use the consultant to our advantage. That's what we paid for. So we need to go up and talk to different agencies, and we'll talk about who that is and who's going where and stuff later. But I just want to show that the public that this is meant to get the best bang for our buck, but also return on our investment by getting federal dollars. Because there's many projects that we have that are just beyond our ability as a locality, and we have to have that federal aid. And we know that squeaky wheel gets the oil. So it is, to advantage, especially of a small city of our size, we can get overlooked very easily by the bigger ones. So I think there's a big advantage to this. So I do support this. I just want to make sure that we understand that there's a high level of ethic and professionalism that'll come with this. And I'm confident, of course, in our council. So is there any other, yes?
So with the additional.
You just turned it off.
With the additional council members, we can reach out to, have we reached out to Ken Calvert's office as well?
Yeah, we're going to maximize.
Okay, good.
Maximize Ruiz, Calvert, the agencies, the federal transportation, all that railroad, all that stuff that we can.
Okay,
Maximize. the
great.
Is there a need for one of us to back out so that you have 2 and 2?
No.
No, because again, I probably won't stay the whole time, so there'll be time, and then we'll look at the schedule. It really depends on, we can plan this, but if there's nobody there, then it depends on the time of day, because if it's not the legislator, it'll be the staff. So we're trying to get the legislator, of course, but it just depends on the schedule. I think.
And that's a good point. Oftentimes, elected officials are tight on time, and we will be meeting with their chief of staff in DC. Congressman Ruiz, I'm sure, will meet with us personally.
But I'd like to take that regional approach again and talk to, like Councilmember White said, Calvert and everyone else around the area. I think it's beneficial so that they hear that some of the projects we're looking at is a big benefit to the area. And I think it's a necessity.
So, Councilmember Voigt brought up, I wanted to revisit Mr. Finn's comment. I don't think it's necessary that we pair up so we're always in the same pair. I think we all know what we're supposed to do as far as our responsibilities, and I think we need some flexibility, and I think just going there, understanding that we have rules to follow, and just like I said, we may have some schedules we have to adjust for. So I would like more flexibility as far as teaming up with each other and that kind of thing.
Okay, I'll comment on that. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, go ahead.
Yes, and then just with that, I would assume that we would have meetings scheduled prior to arriving. Staff would figure out which staff members is attending that one, which council member is attending. We'd be briefed ahead of time, and so forth. We kind of go over our game plan and our homework and all that and so forth. Okay.
It's really an elevator pitch. I mean, that's what you do when you walk in the room. It's an elevator pitch.
Councilmember Blake?
Yeah, I just had one other discussion to maybe, you were, Mayor, speaking about regions. Do we want to reach out to our neighboring cities or other parks districts that are around and just let them know we're going? I just in an essence of collaboration. Not that they would piggyback, but just to be good neighbors.
Well, I might suggest, in my opinion only, that as our first trip,
Sure.
we kind of feel the waters and see, because we have our new consultant. I want to see what they're doing for us and how we're going to fit in that picture in their big agenda. And then we might want to go from there. That's my opinion, though. Go.
I agree. I think we'd be more focused, just to concern with our issues.
All right, and my only comment, Mayor Pro Tem pretty much checked it, as long as we have the game plan, and I know we were, but I just wanted to mention that was the only concern I had. So if we're breaking up and stuff, we'll have a schedule, we'll know who's going where, and as long as we have that game plan before, I think we're fine. So I'm okay with that. All right, so now then, hard work. You'll be reaching out to church and let them know we're coming, get those things going, and then some kind of game plan we'll have with pairing and so forth, and scheduling who's going when and so forth, and who can stay, if everyone's looking at the full time or not, depending on, I guess, the schedule first, right? Okay, so stay tuned for more information. Does that sound good? Everybody's fine? You got direction? Okay, so we're good with that then. That goes to item J5, the discussion and direction of items to be placed on City Council's consent calendar. Staff report, Ms. Gibbs again.
Thank you again. This item was another item that City Council asked to be brought back for discussion, and it stemmed from the procurement ordinance that was at its first reading at the last meeting. It should be noted that you did approve the second reading of that ordinance under the consent calendar tonight. So I tried to lay out in the staff report very clearly what the city manager signing authority would be now that the second reading has been approved. So if professional services contracts are under $75,000, maintenance services and equipment under $25,000, and public works contracts under $25,000. And then, just as a matter of practice, the way that in conversations with Nicole, the way past practice has been with the agenda setting, it's consent items are non-controversial in nature, no more than $40,000 in expenditures, or has been reviewed previously by City Council and are either an informational update or a contract amendment. Minutes, warrants, contract amendments, maintenance expenditures, or professional service contracts under $40,000. Those are all things that have been on the consent calendar. And with that, that'll complete my staff report.
Right, thank you. Public comment?
I have no written requests. Rudy, do we have any callers on the line?
I have no callers on the line.
All right, we'll open it for council. I see no lights. All right, we'll go with Mr. Laurel first.
Too close.
Well, you'd asked to wait, so.
Thank you, Mayor. So looking at what we're putting on consent, and with the understanding that we know anything that we see on consent can be pulled off consent, is there any interest in increasing maintenance service equipment and public works contracts from 25 to 75,000 so that all three are consistent? with the understanding that if we saw something on consent that we did have concerns with, could be pulled. The only reason I mention that is because when we first set these parameters, we're just coming out of some difficult situations or difficult times. So we were erring on the side of caution. I think with the way things are running now, I'd hate to hamstring staff by keeping such a low dollar amount. But again, I wouldn't want to do anything that council isn't obviously comfortable with. But at least 75,000 would be consistent across the board. And we do always have the option of pulling off consent and discussing it in open session, so.
And to clarify, Mr. Allard, that was for maintenance service and equipment, but not public works, correct?
No, that would be for both, sir.
It would be for both, the
Yes, ma'am.
requesters 2 and 3. Okay.
Just my suggestion.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Councilmember White.
You almost took my question, Mike. I think we should go 75,000 across the board for the city manager's signing authority. But there's a couple comments I wanted to make. I think one of the advantages of raising the city manager's spending authority is no longer a need to do as many consent items, which means you don't have a lot of staff preparation time. The way this is handled at RCTC is that the general manager comes back and does a report, I think a quarterly report, listing all of the items that she signed under her authority. I don't think we need to go down as low as 5,000 and that kind of thing, but and I think 40,000 is I think it should be 75,000 to be on the consent calendar, unless it's a controversial issue. And then the other concern that I had that I was discussing this with Elizabeth, and the issue came up. We're suggesting moving from 25 to 75,000 because we have a city manager that has earned our trust. And I would hate to be in a position where the next city manager comes in assuming that, we're going to be at 75,000 and going forward with that. So I don't know if there's a way to take the political possible confrontation that would come up when we get a new city manager, that they're starting out at 25,000. Is there, John, Mr. Pinckney, is there a way to do that in some type of one of our ordinances we already have that just says a new city manager would be starting at 25,000? And
Well, the issue right now that we're discussing is what goes on the consent calendar versus what doesn't go on the consent calendar, right? And so I think you can have an annual review of that. You can tell this city manager that we're going to allow it at 75,000, and then upon a new city manager, years down the line, you can say we're going to roll it back for a while.
Okay.
To the way it was. It's
so
really your
since
discretion.
Mike and my suggestion of moving to 75,000 across the board is also not on the agenda. I think to do our plan around what's going to go on the consent calendar is a little premature until we have the discussion on the 75,000 across the board. Yes.
So I want to clarify something with Mr. Pinckney. If, when the new city manager comes in, it would take a ordinance change to do that, correct?
We're talking about what goes on the consent calendar right now, right? So that's what's on the agenda this evening, is giving direction on what is placed on the city council's consent calendar.
Right, and I'm suggesting that we continue, that we table that part of the discussion, come back with the 75,000 across the board, and at that time, we could bring up the idea of where we want to do, we can agendize it so we can discuss these.
So the separate issue of city manager signing authority is what you want to address first, and then come back later and talk about what goes on.
But we could do it in the same meeting, right?
You could do it at the same time.
Yeah, so that's what I'm suggesting.
Okay.
Would you like to make a motion on that, or?
I didn't know if anyone else had
So the
discussion.
lights go off, so.
So do we need a motion?
Is this
To
direction?
table
This is
it?
just to give
just
direction to
direction.
staff at this
Okay.
time.
Well, you do need to move, we don't have to table it then.
Mayor, I just,
Go ahead, when I'm thinking.
I was just thinking maybe when we do bring it back about the consent items, that maybe as we bring on a new mayor annually with our ordinance, that would be something we could establish at that time, that this is what we'll do for the consent calendar this time. It may be just a blessing of what we've previously done, but it would give us kind of a formalized option when we're adopting in a new city representative at that time, or in a new role, I guess.
I'm not sure I understand what you're saying.
I think I was basically recommending that we would just decide what would go on the consent calendar annually when the new mayor came on board.
As a decision made by the mayor, or as us bringing this back to an issue to be discussed?
I think as an agreement with the council.
Let me clarify something though, because one of the authorities of the mayor is to set the agenda. So with that authority, the mayor would set the agenda according to how he or she believes it should be done, and then if council has issue with that, then they can bring that up at that time. So I think what we could do is come up, since we're discussing it anyway here, come up with an idea, and then when the next mayor comes in, they'll either say, yes, I'm gonna do this, or I'm gonna modify it this way at that point, if that's what you're talking about, on the consent only.
Yeah, I wanted to bring this back because that discussion came up before when Mr. Martinez had already had the discussion with the city manager. I think that our policy on the consent calendar should be a decision made by council, and a decision that council can change later if we need to. Because my concern is that you have a future mayor come in and say, well, I don't want to put those items on the consent calendar. And now we've given that authority to the mayor to do that. So I would prefer that, and that was where my concern was if we set some policy and then a new city manager comes in and just assumes they're going to take that same policy. That's why I wanted to bring up the discussion, what would happen when we have a transition.
So, Mr. Pena, that would require then a discussion of the mayor's duties and responsibilities.
So in many cities and public agencies, it is the mayor or the president of the board that in consultation with the city manager sets the agenda. But you as a council can decide what you want to have on consent and what you don't want to have on consent. You can make that decision. It's not part of an ordinance. It's just direction that you're giving to your mayor and your city manager, because somebody has to put the calendar together or the agenda together, and you can't all five do it, right? Because that would be a meeting. So somebody's got to do it, and really this is an opportunity to provide some input to the mayor and the city manager, what you want to see on consent and what you don't. But it's not part of an ordinance.
But if the mayor comes in and decides, for example, let's say, and I would like to see the numbers, an idea from you, how much time it costs you to put an agenda item, consent calendar agenda item that is under your signing authorization. So what I'm saying is if a mayor comes in and says, you know what, I want to show everything that's on there that's more than 25,000, then that mayor has the ability at that point to dictate that staff can now provide consent calendar items for everything. And again, I think that that's a decision that should be made. Shouldn't be a decision made by a.
Let me see if I can help clarify this. So I'm going to give you an example. Because I see where you're going, Councilmember White, and I appreciate that, but I want to make sure that it's very clear when I talk about an ordinance. If I am a new city manager and I come in and you all hire me, the first thing I'm going to do is read the municipal code. And the municipal code is going to say 75,000 and over has to come to city council. Any other expenditure you will never see right now, because in my mind as a new city manager, council only wants to see 75,000 and above. So 40,000 is not going to come to council, 36,000, you follow me, 60,000. So that's when I say refer to the ordinance. As a city manager, I have the authority without going to city council to approve any expenditure under. However, what I might suggest is if council wants to see something in, periodically that says, this is what I've approved. I like Councilmember White's idea about the quarterly list. It gives the public the idea of what's happening behind the scenes. It gives council that idea as well. Having the signing limit of 75,000 is going to save a lot of staff time on expenditures that are in the normal course of business, that are in the budget, but have to come to council because that's what the ordinance says. Does that help at all? I don't know if I helped.
No, I think you helped set up the next discussion very well.
Okay, very
Yeah.
well. So you're good on that?
Yeah. Really quickly, though, I thought what Councilmember White was saying was that at the time that the mayor changes is when, not that the mayor would make the decision, but that the mayor would bring this item back to council so that, for review. Not necessarily that the mayor would make the changes. So you would just use the changing of the mayor as the opportunity to bring this particular ordinance item back to council.
So
that you could review it if you wanted to keep it where it was, or if a new city manager was in place, you could say, you know what, let's take it back down.
But just
Is that-
clarify on ordinance, because remember, we're talking about ordinance versus consent calendar placement. So the ordinance refers to signing authority,
Right,
and then the placement on consent is not. That's procedure. So is that what you're asking? That when the new mayor comes in, that they say, okay, this is what I want to put on consent and not, but the 75 is still going to stay unless you want that to be brought back as well? Reconsideration of the ordinance. I mean, that's,
Councilmember White had brought up the concern where we have a new city manager. Mr. Pinckney suggested that we could bring it up annually, right, so that we could adjust that.
Okay, so
Or
you're
at least
referring-
look at it. So I'm referring to
the signing
the
authority.
signing authority.
Okay, just clarifying. So, I agree. My whole idea was to cut back on staff reports.
Yes.
Staff reports are not needed because we have warrant ability. So any expenditure that the city manager does comes out on a warrant. Chris, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so there's nothing there's no car that's gonna be bought that we're not gonna know about because it's there on the warrant. So council always has that vision to look over. We have city treasurer and so forth, EDC, there's a lot of people looking at that. So there's always that public transparency. So I want to make sure that the public understands that part. And I agree with the 75,000. I think it's totally necessary, especially for maintenance. Some of these parts are ridiculously high.
Yeah.
So, 25, 40 is way too low for that. So it has to be done. So I agree 100% on that. And so what I like to do is bring back, again, for the next meeting, we'll start with the signing authority first.
Okay.
And then the next item would be the consent item, so that whatever we discuss there, we can go on to the next one. And I'm okay, I don't want to make it sound like I'm not,
Yeah,
for
no.
the consent thing, it doesn't matter. I just want everybody in agreement.
I like that. Thank you.
Okay, then we have direction. You're good? Okay, so that brings us to item K for legislative update.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. A few bills I'd like to bring to your attention that we're watching. AB 510 by Jackson would require each city and county to establish a local land trust for purposes of holding and developing property. And it would be required to hold at least 5% of the land for the purposes of developing affordable housing. I have not seen a position come out of league yet on that, but it's one that we're watching at the staff level to see how that's going to go. AB 516 is a revisit or continuance of a bill that was up last cycle, and it's come back requiring, or it would require, as a condition of development, all project fees to be expended within a reasonable amount of time that they, from when they had been deposited in an escrow account. So talking about fees that would come in to pay for large-scale projects that might not necessarily be ready to go. So there's some implications there, continuing to watch this one. Another bill, AB 627, from Jackson, would prohibit after January 1, 2030, a person from operating a diesel-fueled heavy truck on the city streets or county roads located in specifically counties of Riverside or San Bernardino. So again, we're definitely being targeted there, and the legislator he is actually one from within our counties. So again, watching this one. SB 405, this related to the next cycle of housing element, which although we've just adopted, I think within 5 years, we'll be starting that process again of looking at arena numbers and all that fun stuff. But would impose some new notification requirements between a public agency and property owners regarding property being included and what the requirements would be for development if that property was to be included in the housing element. So continuing to watch that one. And City Manager Gibbs gave the rest of my legislative update when we talked about the DC trip. So she covered items that would have been submitted to our legislators for funding request, and Congressman Ruiz's application cycle did just open, so we'll be submitting the same requests into the Congressman's office, and then working with our federal lobbyists to get the DC trip logistics underway. That concludes my legislative report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, Ms. Taylor, I do have one. So I've been asked by the mayor of Lake Elsinore, Mayor Johnson, to possibly give a support letter for SB 602. Is it possible that next time you can bring back some more information on 602 so council can discuss whether they want to
Yes, sir.
support that? That has to do with the graffiti and public nuisance.
Okay, sure thing.
Okay, anything else from council? Okay, moving on to item L, the economic development update.
Your economic development update, next meeting is tomorrow at 4 p.m. The committee will be hearing a presentation on the fog ordinance, which will be similar to what council heard here, but we will also be including some of the residential components that were discussed at the staff level that were not necessarily presented in full here at the council meeting last time. And then we'll also be providing an update on the economic development incentive programs for downtown, which we have already received a number of applications on.
Good, great job.
That concludes my report.
Very nice. All right. No council discussion. That'll leave us to item M, city treasurer report.
At 8 p.m., I have nothing to report. Thank you.
Yes, I know you emphasized the 8 p.m. Thank you so much. Item N, city clerk report.
We're good.
We're good today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item O, city attorney report.
Yes, just to give you a brief update on some of the matters that we're handling. Some of these we discuss in closed session, and we do that under the attorney-client privilege, so my comments in open session are very brief. But we have the two Illapatafe matters. One is a state court action. The city's prevailed in that state court action. Motion for reconsideration was recently denied. And the federal court action, that's still at the pleading stage. We have a pending motion to dismiss in the federal court action. And then also in the Reeves versus City of Beaumont case, we discussed that this evening in closed session, and that the city has been dismissed from that case. IS versus the City of Beaumont, the city has been dismissed in that case. Paula Ann Wright versus the City of Beaumont, that's a bike accident case. It is in the discovery phase. And then also Juan Gabriel Cesares versus City of Beaumont, we reported out from closed session that the council voted to defend that case, so that's at the pleading stage. And then Nicholas Norman versus the City of Beaumont, that's being handled by the law firm of Manning and Cass, and it's a case that's currently in the discovery phase. And then Omar Ochoa versus City of Beaumont, this is another one that we reported out this evening that the council voted to defend, and that also involves a bike accident. I'm sorry, that one involves a car accident. And then also Carolyn Durick versus City of Beaumont, and that's a slip and fall case, and that's in the pleading stage as well. And then in addition to working on the litigation matters, we've been representing the city on land use matters, public contracting matters. We're working with the city manager and city staff on updating the sign ordinance that will be coming to you soon. And then also assisting with Public Records Act matters, Brown Act matters, and then as needed labor and employment issues. And that's my report.
Thank you, Mr. Pinckney. Item P, city manager report.
Just a few announcements. So the Three Rings Ranch Playground is currently under construction. I encourage you to go by the park and look at the progress. We are working with Three Rings Ranch Elementary School to assist us in the ribbon cutting of that. We would like to have as many residents in that area attend, so we will be setting a date soon. The Shamrock Jam is this Sunday at the CRC. I expect to see everybody there. It will be catered by Cornerstone, and Craft Lounge will be there as well. And we have a nice band coming. The IOA Golf Championship is, for us, March 22nd. And we do have a team from Beaumont confirmed. We also have a team from Calamasa and a team from Banning confirmed to compete, and I fully expect Beaumont to keep the trophy. And then finally, this Friday is the monthly chamber breakfast, and I will be the guest speaker. And just to let you know, I've put a PowerPoint together to talk about council's strategic plan.
All right, thank you, Ms. Gibbs. Item Q, future agenda items. Councilmember White.
Yeah, I would like to bring back an item to discuss a short-term rental tax.
And I believe we discussed that on Plus, didn't we? Didn't we have a Plus discussion on that?
We briefly discussed some inquiries that staff has received.
Oh, that may not have been it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Anyone else? Mr. Lara?
On that short-term rental tax, there's also, what the other cities that you had mentioned are doing, at least to my knowledge, is a registration so that you know where those short-term rentals are. So I don't know if that's what if you want to add that to your item, but just.
Yeah, I think the whole discussion on creating an ordinance concerning short-term rentals. Because the county has had to deal with that a lot in the last year or two, and we might as well get ourselves in order.
In the short term.
And then with that discussion, we'll have the difference in fees and taxes, and we can discuss that more as well. Okay, for me, I had a request from Cal Cities for the letter of support for the Chuckwalla State Prison. I think I mentioned this last time. So they're asking for a formal letter from councils. Norco wants to close, so the state wants to close, I mentioned this last time, and it was gonna destroy the community, really. So they would like to keep it open, and Norco has volunteered to close theirs, and they would like that support letter written in a way to request that the state reconsider that. So we can bring that back.
It actually is to keep Blythe, the Chuckwalla prison, open in Blythe and close Norco.
That's correct. Is that what I said? Something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, so, okay. Yeah, so that discussion.
So I think we learned earlier this year that it doesn't have to be an agenda item to give you direction on a letter of support. So can we just see if there's a consensus right now?
Consensus question from.
Yeah, I do just have a question. Is there opposition on why we would suggest one or the other, or put a support in keeping them both open?
Well, both cities are in support for the position, so Norco definitely wants to close theirs.
Oh, they
Blythe
want
wants
to
keep
close.
theirs
Right,
open.
okay.
Yeah,
So-
Norco's in favor of
They're
that.
requesting to close.
yeah.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
And Blythe, yeah,
Okay.
that's that. So I agree, if everyone's okay, then all right. Now, the other one might come back for discussion, because I've been talking to some groups that have proposed to Congressman Ruiz about creating a Chuckwalla National Monument. Now, this has nothing to do with the prison. So it's, I know that confused me as well. So this is right next to I forgot, I'm going blank now. but there's an extra amount of land that they want, that's already government land, but they want to change that into a national monument for extra protection. And so far, all the communities are for that. The military's for it as well, because that's close to their firing range, but they prefer it being a national monument as well. So if we can look more into that, because I definitely don't want a position now, we don't have enough information to bring to see if that's interested. So Congressman Ruiz is in favor if the communities and agencies around are in favor for it. So that's why I want to discuss to see if we're in favor. We'll jump on that letter and let him go forth with that process to see if that's something that we want to support. Okay, with that then, we'll go to our council reports. Any volunteers?
I'll go.
Go.
It's 8:08 and we missed the free tacos. That's all I have.
It's an inside joke, no one knows. Council member, oh, you want to, okay, Council member Lara.
Sure.
Jump in, you volunteer.
I attended the RCA meeting on Monday. Unfortunately, there is no species of the month. I was disappointed in that. But the poppy bloom is alive and well. It is more than they had anticipated, or better than they had anticipated, but it is not near the 2019 level. And Walker Canyon will remain closed for the next couple of weeks during that bloom. And then I also attended the WRCOG on Monday as well. They are accepting registration now for the General Assembly. The guest speaker is Doris Kearns Goodwin. She's a presidential historian and Pulitzer Prize winning author. And that's my comment. Thank you,
All
Mayor.
right, thank you, Council member Voigt.
Sure, just wanted to mention that I attended the Cal Cities new member training that they had for Riverside County. It was hosted here at the Copper Room, and shout out to the Lions Club for always providing us with a delicious breakfast. It was fairly well attended, but great, I think, for a new council member for sure to come up to date and learn all of the acronyms and everything else that comes with it, learning about COGS and transportation. So that was a great meeting for me to attend. And I also attended the collaborative that we have here for the area, so that was great.
Great, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Finn.
No report this evening.
Oh, well, all right, then that goes with my long report here. So, thank you, Councilmember Voigt, for attending that. I was supposed to go and greet the representatives, but I had jury duty, so I wasn't able to make that, so thank you for that. Attended the Plus Committee meeting, the Sherwin-Williams ribbon cutting. I do apologize for missing the Beaumont Chamber installation, but I was out of town for a few days during that time. I met with the citizens for the Checkwalla National Monument, so we'll hear more about that to come. The Paranconi Juice Tour was very enlightening. Really enjoyed that. It was right here in town. I had no idea the complexity going on in there, so I appreciate that. I met with Congressman Ruiz and County Supervisor Gutierrez at a private event, and we talked about infrastructure and again, those priorities for projects. And I told him we'll be coming to see him soon. And we also talked to Gutierrez about some of the county funds. So we'll be getting together with that and talking more about those priorities and requests coming up. I missed the RCA, so thank you, Councilmember Lara, for attending that. Again, jury duty got in the way of a few things. Oh, no, I shouldn't say that. Jury duty is very important, but unfortunately, I missed a few events for that. And lastly, I attended the County Selection Committee, which is a committee that meets to put electeds on certain county, well, not county, but there's certain committees. And I guess we have a representative from the county at these meetings. So I have been appointed to here's a long name, you ready? Mobile Source Air Pollution Reduction Review Technical Advisory Committee, otherwise known as MSRC-TAC. Yeah, so we'll be hearing what they have to say. They're part of the South Coast Air Quality Management District. It's a subcommittee. So we'll hear what that has to do, and I'll be looking forward to talking to staff to find out more what I got into. And that concludes my report. Right, with that, we will adjourn at 8:12. 12 minutes, so close. Oh.